You doing it? No, you got it.
Yep, I got it, and it's there, and it's hit, and the button is done, and get off of my back and all that kind of stuff.
We're live, and now we are live.
And now we are live. Anyhow,
Yes,
yeah, and so it's great to have you on. Anyhow, so as people load on there, generally, Ray and I like to chit chat a little bit for a few minutes while people come on, but in the meantime, hey there, hi there, ho there, out in spray wash land. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about, I already forgot, right? Development,
leadership
skills,
development. Come on, get with the program.
Can tell you're really
not that
excited.
unintelligent, trust me.
We've got our
guest
guest,
tonight
Miss
is Miss Sierra Collins. And Miss Sierra, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My favorite part was listening to your introduction, the hey there, ho there, hi there. I've been waiting for that, actually. I watched some other lives and I was like, I can't wait till he does that for mine.
There you go.
Well,
I don't even know where that
guys
came
for
from, to be
having
honest
me.
with you.
Well, it's awesome. It definitely is very engaging.
There you go.
I am the owner of a leadership development business named Sierra Learnership Collaborative. That's a whole nother thing we can get into, what a learnership is. But I do leadership development, coaching, speaking, and training services for individuals, teams, and entire organizations. So oftentimes I'm working one-on-one with business owners, really helping them a lot of the time with effective communication, productivity, time management, all the things business owners need to work on. And then developing leadership programs for teams and entire organizations.
You said in our little pre-show, you said something that ruminated with me, and it's so 100% true that in leadership development, and you help people overcome obstacles, and so many times in that leadership development, the obstacle is themselves. Boy, how true is that? I mean, how many problems do we have to where we just can't get out of our own way?
Yeah, and that's why it's so helpful to have a coach that can kind of provide a different perspective. Not everybody's coachable, though. So that's why I definitely vet people first and make sure that they're open to the feedback and ready to hear the things that they could be working on. Because oftentimes we find that we're blaming others.
Now, when you say people aren't coachable,
yeah,
tell me about that.
I've had a lot of people who love the idea of having a coach, but when it comes to the tough conversations of them taking responsibility for the things that they are in control of, they don't necessarily, they're not in a place in their journey where they're ready to hear that. There's a lot of blame taking place. Yeah. So I need to work with people who are open to having those difficult conversations and taking ownership of some of the things that they might be doing and could be having a major impact on their business.
Well, and I'm just curious. Let's go down this road. Are you willing to take on somebody for coaching that is a diamond in the rough and willing to change, or do you have like a line in the sand where you're like, no, sorry, you do the interview and you're just not right for me?
So I actually like a good challenge. So I've definitely had plenty that have come my way, and it comes down to the time investment. As long as they're willing to invest the time and effort into it, I'm willing to coach them. But the moment that they're not following through on the things that they're committing to in our session, then I start to question a little bit. But this is where the personality style and communication style comes in. Oftentimes my high D, so Doug, you might know this in DISC, those dominant styles, they are used to kind of taking the lead, taking control. And when I match that D, they might not be responsive at first. So sometimes I have to challenge them a little bit, and then they get right on board. And as soon as they start seeing the impact it's having, they're all in.
Now, when we also talk about coaching, and I'm curious here because I'm genuinely curious. This isn't me, doing a gotcha kind of thing, but I know you said leadership development, and I'm assuming that's also like, the effective communication. Um, are you doing any coaching as far as like the business coaching, sales strategy, how to build your business, or are you more focusing on the coaching of the team development as a leader? Which one would you say?
So I would say it's a balance of both. I feel like I need to have the background knowledge associated with what it looks like to be an effective marketer, be out there selling, and all of the things associated with being a business owner that I have to do myself. I also do coaching along those lines. So the idea of coaching, let me just go over that real quick, because a lot of people get coaching and consulting confused, and sometimes I have to take off one hat and put on the other. So a coach is typically someone who is asking questions to help you look at things from a different perspective and kind of identify those obstacles standing in your way, see them from a different, perspective, and then figure out how to overcome them. So a coach is not directive. So a coach does not have to know the ins and outs of everything in a specific industry to support them. It's about being able to ask questions. A consultant is usually more directive. Now, there are times where I will specifically say to my client, you've hired me to be your coach, but right now I feel there's something you need to hear. And I'm going to ask if I can put that consultant hat on and give you some ideas of what direction to go here. So sometimes I do that, but I avoid it in the beginning because I find that it's more powerful to let people arrive at these decisions on their own and take ownership of it. It's from my teaching background, right? I would not teach my students how to do the algorithm. I'd let them discover the algorithm so they remember it forever. There's a big difference between the two. So that's how I distinguish between coaching and consulting.
Well, and I would also add into that as the grandfather, very helicopter hovering grandfather to a 7-year-old, you think about the difference between the consulting and the coaching, and a good coach for baseball, for football, for whatever, we're doing, we realize that different people respond to different stimuli, and there's what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses? Okay, I might not necessarily need to coach him so much on the blocking, but coach him more on his snapping, or whenever he's in a shotgun versus that kind of coaching, and I think of the coaches that we've had, and like you're saying, even with the teaching, sometimes you have to let. And I see there's the difference between the consultant and the coaching there, because now we've got to let people, the consulting is almost one where it seems like where you're going to let them discover more and more. But the coaching, you're actually kind of discovering about them and playing to their strengths and weaknesses. Would that be?
Well, I think when she first started off too, she was also talking about, like getting to know them and asking the questions and things of that nature. Right. It's not much different than us going out to sell a job, if you would. Like when you go up to that front door, you don't just start hammering the sale. You start asking questions to figure out, first of all, you break the ice with general chit chat, that kind of a thing. But then you have to get into asking those questions to understand what their issue and what their problem is. Once you understand what their issue and their problem is, then you can help start addressing those issues and guiding them the right direction.
Yeah. So what you just said there, Doug, so that's the coaching side of it, but I'm going to pull in the effective communication, because while you're having that interaction with that person for the first time, you're reading them to determine, is this someone who's more people oriented and they want to see that I'm building a relationship? This isn't transactional. Is this someone who is more task oriented and wants to be able to say, hey, this is the job, this is what I want done, just let me know what it costs, right? You have to be able to read those cues in the very beginning, because if you don't match now your communication with their style, you can very quickly turn them off to the sale.
Exactly.
Some people are going to be Joe Friday, just the facts, ma'am. And other people are going to want to, where are you located at, Sierra?
So I reside in Greencastle, Pennsylvania. My office is in Winchester, Virginia.
So Doug and I are both down here in the deep South. I'm in Tallahassee. He's in Red Stick, Louisiana. And we're a lot of times our customer are you don't jump straight into business with our customers so many times. I mean, there's a how's your mama? How's your mama's dog? How's your mama's dog's fleas? And we're going to go under that.
Every one of them, you name them.
Before you ever get down to the brass tacks of doing business out there. But you're 100% right, though. I think that's, as we mentioned in the pre-show, effective communication is probably one of the biggest failings of the people that are failing with their pressure washing business. We're seeing things. One of my pet peeves is yard signs. There's so many people in this industry, teachers, coaches in this industry. Oh yeah, you need to go out and order 1,000 yard signs and put them up. And then you need to first off, I'm not saying yard signs may not work for you, but what the hell do you actually see with yard signs, guys? Credit repair and we buy houses and overstock furniture, $250 for love seat and couch. That's literally what you see in the yard.
Or puppy.
When have you actually seen a dentist, a doctor, a lawyer, somebody, a professional service advertising on a yard sign?
Yeah.
So we have that. And then second off, one of my other peeves is, and Doug and I were Doug and I we ran our business very, very similar to each other. But the folks that go and say, well, why can't you give me a bid? Why can't you give me a bid on Google? I'm going to give you my address. What's the price? Guys, y'all are missing such an opportunity here if you don't do that. I mean, this is the difference between the Hyundai and the Mercedes right here, of getting out there and getting that intimate time with the customers and being able to talk to them and catch their key points. And in fact, if they're the ones that don't want to meet with you, I just want the price. Guess what? It's a gift from God right there, because you're probably not my guy.
Yep, that's so true. I was going to say,
how do you
take
evaluate a potential customer, Ms. Sierra? Sorry to cut you off there.
No, you're totally fine. So for myself, I do it based on my own disc style. So if I can give just a real quick overview of what disc is, so people know what in the world I'm talking about. So this goes back. The origin of human behavior studies was all the way back to Hippocrates and Empedocles. So people are probably like, well, okay, what are you talking about? That's like 400 BC. These individuals started to notice a pattern in people's behaviors and their personality traits. One thought it was earthly elements impacting it. The other thought it was bodily fluids. Fast forward 1921. This is what you were mentioning, Ray. Carl Jung came up with thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuition, the Myers-Briggs assessment that many people talk about. And then in 1928, that's when Dr. William Marston, he wrote a book called The Emotions of Normal People, but he came up with disc theory for the first time. And so basically, this is a way for us to take a look at people's patterns in their behaviors. Once you identify a pattern and things are more predictable, you know how to properly respond. So the D in DISC stands for dominant or direct. So people kind of substitute that word back and forth. So typically this talks about the way we handle problems and challenges. So you're either high D or low D. So a high D is someone who's going to handle them head on, jump in head first, take charge, take ownership, and they're usually focused on end results. So that was the example I gave earlier, that customer that's just like, hey, I just want this done. I don't care how you get there. I just want it done. The lower the D, the less dominant. They're going to hold back. They're going to kind of feel you out first. They're not going to jump in and make a decision right away. The I is influencer. So our I's are extremely outgoing. These are the ones that are going to talk your your ears off as soon as you arrive. They want to build a relationship with you. They want to tell you about their family. But these individuals will quickly shut down if they don't feel valued or cared about. So that's very important to keep in mind, that you need to mirror their behaviors. So match the dominant D with dominance, right? Match the I with the happy-go-lucky optimism. I'm here to save the day, but tell me about your family first. Yeah, exactly. The S is for steady. So it talks about the pace in which people get things done and the way they move. So the higher the S, the slower the pace, actually. So we think of our high S's as very loyal, a team player. They're the one that executes. They get things done. You can always depend on them to follow through. Love having S's around. And C is compliance. So these are the people who are very analytical, detail-oriented. Everything's organized, planned out in advance. So I was joking before this that I'm CD, so very analytical, and I take charge and I know what I want done. So coming on to something without having like a very clear plan, this is the opposite of how I typically would function. I have everything outlined that I'm doing in advance.
I am a total fly by the seat of my pants guy too. And a lot of what
you stepped in it with two fly by night guys. Yeah, there you go.
It's this, right? And really any of these, the DISC, the Myers-Briggs, the any of the personality, the neuro-linguistic programming and all of that essentially all comes down to a grid like that. And so this might be your D. I'm sorry, I'm doing this backwards in my camera. This might be your D, and then this might be your I, and you're plotting yourself somewhere along these axes, of where you are on that. But so we've got, these 4 character traits, and your blend of those 4 traits on there are winds up being where you are.
Yeah. So to go back, and by the way, that was great. Great visual. Doug, to go back to what
I'm an artist, as you can tell. I can tell.
It was beautiful.
Sideline.
As far as assessing the people that I'm going to work with, I don't have a specific style that I'm only going to work with. I enjoy them all. I think I struggle to match the energy of an I. It can be exhausting at the end of a call. I might make that the last call of my day, so I don't have any more customers the rest of the day. But I find that a lot of times my higher SCs wish that they were more dominant, and they're really working on becoming more dominant in situations and not being people pleasers, just like taking charge of the situation, being clear in what they want. And then the opposite is true, that a lot of the higher Ds wish that they could slow down a little bit and be more careful and intentional when making decisions because they rush through things. So it's really an interesting mix. I enjoy working with any style, but on the spot, you can look for behaviors that immediately help you categorize and just change what you're doing in the moment. Right. So
do you feel like if somebody is too much one way, that do you tell them and try to help guide them in going the other way, do you think?
I will support them. Okay, so there's no best style, but if I see that because they're so strong in one area that it's impacting their business in another, so with every strength comes a weakness. If you're so direct that you're getting right to the point with your clients and they want a relationship, you're losing business because of it. Of course, I'm going to coach them to be more relational, right? If someone is so detail oriented and they're coming, early, they have a plan in place, they're ready to jump into it, but again, they're not taking time to get to know the person, they're losing business because of it. So I will coach them in whatever area they're struggling with, but I do want to capitalize on their strengths as well. We want to make sure that we're tapping into those strengths and not just focusing on weaknesses. I hope that answered your question.
So not just though with sales, because a lot of guys, I would say a lot of guys in this industry, probably have the sales, at least the people that would be using you, right? The
Yeah.
people that would be going, because
Using a coach in general.
using a coach. Talk to a moment about because these would not be lone wolves out here. If you're good and you've got legs in this business, and you're up there in that, you're now in that $400,000-$500,000 range, and you're wanting to kick it up to the next level. Let's say you're utilizing a truck with 2 employees on there, and you're on a truck, or maybe you have 2 trucks, and you're at, like I said, $400,000 to $500,000 on there. Where a lot of these guys, a lot of people that I've spoken to over the years, and by no means am I as qualified of a coach in the DISC or the Myers-Briggs that you are, but where we see people having difficulty is transitioning from that business owner of I wear this hat, and then over here I put on this hat, and I'm the chief salesperson. Now I'm the mechanic, and now I'm the crew leader, and I keep having to wear all these different hats at this. Sometimes our communication can be very not where it needs to be with our team, not so much our customers, because I could probably sell ice to an Eskimo. But at the same time, I will sit there and scream at the guys that are making me money, going, "Why? I told you to wrap the hedges. I told you to get the hoses before you left the shop." And talk for a minute how you can really help business people more with the intrapersonal team building thing more so than the sales thing.
I'm happy to. That's actually where I focus the majority of my time. So I just had a client that I worked with recently where they have a team of 14, and I went in and we use DISC for that too. So once we identify individual styles and figure out what's going well for them and what struggles they're having, they can then advocate for their needs with the rest of the team and say, when you're communicating with me, this is what I need from you. So I need you to slow it down so I can take notes. I need to have stuff in writing so I can refer to it later. Or if you could just summarize and hit the main points, we can hit the details later. Whatever it may be, being able to stop and think about, okay, when I'm talking to Doug or when I'm talking to Ray, it needs to be different. I can do a phone call with Ray, but with Doug, I need to be face-to-face, whatever it might be.
Right.
So I love this because we can completely transform the communication within the company. And I think the business owner obviously has to be really open-minded to this, because there have been people in the past that have done a DISC assessment, categorized people, and then walked away and done nothing with it. That doesn't add value to the organization. This is an ongoing process. So when I sign a DISC contract with a team, this is an entire year with quarterly accountability, me stepping in and saying, okay, how's communication going? What changes have occurred since we last spoke? How are you using it? Otherwise, it's a language. It's like when I learned Spanish for 10 years and then I stopped for a year and now I can't speak Spanish, right? This DISC, it's a language. And once you learn to communicate with it, it's so helpful. We spend 80 to 90% of our waking hours in some form of communication, right? So it impacts your relationship with everybody, business owner or not. And you can't just set it to the side. You have to keep practicing.
One of the things that, Ray, you were doing is you were sitting there and you were switching hats, right? And it was always the same hat because you don't have another hat sitting beside you, right? But while you were doing that, it was actually a great analogy mental vision for me, in that that's what everybody's doing. They're wearing all these different hats and they're not realizing they're the same hat.
The same freaking hat. It really is.
You have to do something and give that hat to somebody else, or do something different, or find a different way to go about what you're doing, because half the time you're putting on the exact same hat. Just
I would actually go to a point here. I mean, and you may have, we had 8 to 10 technicians at times, and we have a problem as a business owner where we start and we lump office manager. She put her in a pigeonhole, or him in a pigeonhole, and then we put the technicians in a pigeonhole. But we have to understand that just as our customers are different, our technicians might be not might be, I guarantee you our technicians are very different too. And if you're
Absolutely.
talking to all your technicians the same way and not understanding how some of them learn and some of them don't learn and some of them respond and don't respond, you're really missing the boat on there. And I've told this story before on this podcast. I've got a very close friend. It used to be a real close friend. We don't talk as much anymore, but she's a personal, a life coach, lady. And whenever she was developing her company, she said, "Hey, I want you to look at something, and what do you think about this questionnaire?" And she did a lot of the NLP stuff, and I remember looking at her going, "Claire," I said, "What is this questionnaire for?" She's like, "Well, I'm giving this to all of my potential customers to fill out, to help with the coaching." And I just laughed, and I was like, "This is basically the Myers-Briggs, the shortened down version or the disc of that you're giving them." I said, you're telling these people are telling you how to sell to them by the questionnaire
That's exactly it.
that you're submitting." And she laughed. She's like, "You nailed it. You actually figured out what I'm doing here."
Yeah.
And it's true though, because but we almost need to do this with our individual employees and figure out who's going to respond best to which type of training and teaching and method of, or some guys need hands-on, some guys we can tell something to, some guys need a visual out there. They're not all going to respond the same way.
You are exactly right. That I like this comment from Jeremy. This is exactly the whole point of what we're talking about, is communicating with someone the way they want to be communicated with, not the way you do it naturally. So I'm very detail oriented, but I kill people with the amount of detail I'd put in stuff. So I have to force myself to, I'm shooting an email to someone, it's a one-liner because I know that that's what they need. So really thinking about the person and how to best deliver the information, and playing into the strengths of your team members too, and knowing this is my detail oriented person, and this is the part of the job I want them on because I know that they're going to check everything before they walk away, right? You have to stop and think about those strengths and play into them. But in an office setting, I know you guys are out in the field, but in an office setting, my clients will actually outside of their offices or on their computer, put what their disc style is. So before someone approaches them, they stop and they read the letters associated with their style and they think about how they need to adjust based on that. So it's really interesting.
Pronouns.
You
is it he, him, or on his name?
The scatterbrain people are
That
the
was
ones that you send one-liner emails to. Is that what I just heard?
No. Okay. So I will do one-liners.
So anyhow,
I will do a one-liner with a smiley face at the end to make sure that they know I'm not mad. That's the thing for my high I people. But once I get off a call with a high I always follow up in writing with a summary of key points that we covered, because oftentimes they're distracted by their next thought and they aren't really fully listening. So they're not going to retain half of the stuff that you said. So I just know that in advance and I'll shoot them an email. There are some of the companies that I've trained. It's hilarious because I'll send an email to the entire company, but I'll label each part of the email. This is for my D's, and it'll be like real quick, to the point, direct, and then my I's, and I'll put a smiley face at the end. But I'll break it down so they can just read the part that's for them.
So what do you think is the best way for somebody out there to do that with their employees?
The best way to what? Kind of categorize and figure out?
To kind of categorize or to get an understanding and maybe to be able to better relate to their employees for their growth.
So what I would say is, if you guys would allow me to share it with you after the call, I have a one-pager PDF that basically breaks down, if you see these behaviors, they're probably this style, and here are some tips in communicating with them. I'd say that's a good place to start and just kind of put it into practice and start analyzing the people around you.
Is that a
and test-
downloadable PDF
Yeah,
or PDF?
I knew what you meant.
You can put it in the comments right there.
Yeah, we can put it in the comments, or we can
Okay.
also load it into the Academy forum.
I was
as
going to
well.
say, well, I'd have to do it while you guys are talking because I'll have to locate it. But
No, you don't have to. You can even do it after the show, and
Okay.
people can.
Boy, I tell you what,
That'll
Doug,
be
we
in
should
there.
literally just go quiet right now, like for the first time ever, just like give the uncomfortable silence so she has to like look it up.
Yeah, there you go.
don't do that to me.
And after 45 years of doing this, we've never actually been quiet. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, but that's a great question. If you're not doing a formal DISC assessment, there are still some key indicators that you can look for and quickly kind of tell. Once you're familiar with the 4 letters, you'll be able to tell on the spot. But I think the most important thing is open communication and asking the person, what can I do to better meet your needs? When I'm training you, what's missing?
Right.
I think that is that the open lines of communication, are key, not just identification via an assessment, a formal assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Scott,
Yeah,
you can get this to your
sometimes a
wife.
formal assessment can put people at instead of putting them at ease, it does the exact opposite. They don't want that. They feel it's confrontational to have an assessment, or there's a lot of people that have that test anxiety. So if they feel like that's what it is, it can actually do the reverse effect of what you're looking to do.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Sierra, I didn't mean to catch up, but I just want to say, Scott, there's basically 2 theories to arguing with your wife, and neither one of them work.
Yeah.
So just remember that.
Well, it's funny that he said that because I just had someone last week. She bought a DISC assessment package as a gift for her husband for his birthday. And I'm like, I hope he loves it as much as you think he will.
You're just trying to figure out how to manipulate your man there. Nice.
Yeah, it's a 40-page report. It's basically a user manual. So I do joke, like if you hand it to them, then
User manual. I love it.
exactly
Like
what to
I said, my friend Claire, that was her gig on that. I mean, and it truly was. It was absolutely amazing. And like I said, she's like, you're the first one that ever figured out exactly what I'm doing here. And it's true though, because once we can get into somebody's mind, and I'll go back to the sales and like Tommy Toon is sitting here saying right now, be the good poker player. And I can think of so many different little axioms. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth to listen twice as much as we talk. And this is where most salespeople ruin it. They show up and they throw up, and they're going to want to talk about themselves. And I get it. I was that guy once. I can clean your roof, and I'm really excited because I'm gonna get rid of that nasty algae. And let me tell you about what we're gonna do. Never actually stopping to worry about what they're worried about and just selling myself, And a lot of times selling way past the close. And by that I mean whenever you're at that close, now's the time to shut the hell up and stop selling. Because whenever you're at the close, any additional information you give past the close could only serve to hurt your position.
That's a really good point. Yeah, so you took it back over to sales. So I want to talk about that for a second too. Checking for understanding is very important too. So once you've figured out, who your audience is and you're clear and concise, make sure that they understand what you're talking about too, and ask questions to make sure that they're following you, because a lot of times that's where things fall apart too. They interpreted it a completely different way, and the entire sale could fall apart. So I think that that's important to give them the opportunity to ask those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And instead of you telling them, let them ask, and let them ask, what's important, or let them ask of you versus you telling them of them. You could be, I've seen it happen so many times where you can talk about, cleaning the cleaning someone's roof and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh my gosh, and this is going to stop the biological growth that's eating away at your shingles. And okay, basically they're done. They're ready to sign right there. Their body language is nodding, and you're sitting there, you're mirroring their image, and yes, we're all ready to sign on there. And then you say one stupid thing like, and we're going to use sodium hypochlorite. Boom. I mean, it just tanks your whole deal right there. What you were going to use was never an issue during the sales process. Now suddenly you've made it an issue because you brought it up by selling past that close.
But you also have to look at, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier about understanding and assessing the people that you're talking with to begin with. Because if you're sitting there and we're saying, okay, we're going to let them ask the questions, but they're not the person that asks questions, right? They're too intimidated, or they're too shy, or they don't want to appear stupid, or they're like, well, that's a stupid question, I can't ask that, or whatever. It is important for you to understand that type of behavior, that type of person. And then you continue to ask them questions to draw out what is their real issue, what is their real problem, what is their real, how do you deal with, or how do you address somebody like that, or how do you figure out that that's that type of person to know to go on and ask more questions?
Yeah. So what I would say there is, if they're hesitant and they're not really asking things, I might kind of take charge of the situation and say, some of the most common questions people ask me are, so a lot of people going through this process may ask me this, and then they might nod and be like, oh yeah, I was thinking about that. And that might get them a little bit more comfortable with asking questions. So I would do that. Just have a couple off the top of your head. So that's a great question, but I wanted to comment on something before I forgot. The C people, so the very analytical people, detail oriented. If you gave that piece of information, for example, Ray, when you provide information and then they ask a question of you and you're not 100% sure the answer, you have to just say, you know what, I'm not sure. I will get back to you on that. Let me look into it. The moment that you start to stretch it, if they find out that anything you shared was not accurate, you will not be doing that job.
Everything becomes inaccurate if they realize the first, any part of it, you could be 100% factual the entire way. And as soon as you get to that deviation point, everything is deviation from there.
You've lost all credibility.
I have said for 30 years in any of the training and coaching, teaching, and stuff that I've done in sales, that I don't know is an acceptable, well, hold on.
Yeah.
I don't know, but is an acceptable answer, because it is better to, it is better to, and in fact, in a lot of ways, it's a good thing, because let me get back to you on that. I have your email right here. It's picky-homeowner132@yahoo.com, verifying that I have that right. And whenever I send over this estimate by email, I'm going to answer that question for you. I need to do a little bit of research. I don't want to mislead you. Those people that are concerned about that, they will appreciate that more than a BS answer that could wind up blowing your sale.
But you know what they don't appreciate is when you tell them that and then you don't follow up.
Yeah,
exactly. You need to have a good follow-up game. I put those notifications in my calendar. I am always a specific date and a specific time, follow up with this person. I don't ever want to be that person.
But yeah, it's totally acceptable to not answer a question at that particular time they're asking, if you're going to have to BS them. I mean, it's you're good with it. I mean, you're fine to not do that.
Yeah, I would definitely respect the person more for that.
So what leadership development skills are the most important for a business owner, or what are things that you can work with them on to help them with their leadership development skills?
So obviously, number one is what we've been talking about, effective communication all day, every day. That's huge. Number two is how are people using their time? Like he was talking about earlier with wearing all the hats, being able to really figure out the best way to be efficient, use, I love it. See, it's basically a different hat because it's on backwards. You didn't think of that earlier.
That's highlighting the bold right there.
Productivity, time management, and then really being able to identify the strengths in yourself and others and tapping into those. So if you are growing a team, being able to look at those team members and figure out what part of the business can you really get their support? Where can you start delegating, knowing when it's an appropriate time to start delegating and passing those tasks off to other people who are a good fit and who are bought into it and want to do it and do a good job. So I think that's huge. Conflict resolution is a big one that I support folks with, and really helping people to restore respect after it has been lost in a professional relationship. That's huge. The list goes on and on. It's interesting because oftentimes when I start working with an organization, we start with communication, and as we're going through that process, it starts to uncover lots of other issues, and it allows us to start to unpack those and figure out like what is the skill set that's missing here that we really need to develop in order to overcome that obstacle. But I wouldn't say beyond those first 3 or 4 that it's always the same. I think it's always very different. It's a different dynamic.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I think one of the problems that a lot of guys have in this industry is that they'll hire an office manager or administrative assistant or even technicians because they really like them and they really get along with them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times what happens is people are hiring based on a similarity to themselves, mm-hmm. which a lot of times that can be the absolute worst thing that you can ever do, because you really should, in my opinion, hire to your weaknesses, 100%. Not mirroring yourself. Oh, well, this guy really seems like they'd be good at sales. They're not all that organized, but I'm not all that organized either, so I understand it. Well, no, maybe you don't need to hire somebody good at sales. Maybe you need to hire somebody really good at organization so you can concentrate on selling. So would you rather have 2 great salesmen and 2 and who are both crappy at organization? Or would you rather have a really good organized person backing up your sales play?
Yep. So it's so funny you bring that up. That's exactly. So we use DISC assessments for hiring. So for candidate selection. But oftentimes I'll sit down with a business owner and we'll make a list of non-negotiables prior to them ever looking for anyone, because they'll come in with an emotional connection to someone and think, I just want them on my team. We'll find a spot for them. I'm not sure where they fit, but I really like them and I'll find a spot for them. Or they think like me. But you're exactly right. When you think of that wheel that you showed earlier, Ray, you want people all the way around the wheel. So I will sit down with the team and figure out, okay, let's plot all of your points and what's missing. And a lot of times what's missing, honestly, is that high C, the one that's going to slow you down, keep you organized, look at the details. So that's a very
everybody. This is my special. I have 2 of these notebooks that I just go and write all my deep thoughts and my to-do lists and all that great stuff in. But
and luckily for us, his art skills and his writing skills were taught to him by his 7-year-old grandson.
Roofing on here. I've got oh, it's so important. So
that's funny.
All the important stuff. His grandson is.
I've got my stand-up routine in here too.
You what?
No. I had started writing a stand-up routine at one point that I was going to do. So
Uh,
yeah.
you have to also sit back and look at the mindset, like we were talking about kind of everybody. And when you're talking about hiring for me, when I start looking at things and the way I look at my company as well, the office part for me is absolutely the worst. I hate the office part and all that. And most people, most business owners look at office staff as non-income producing staff. And matter of fact, one of my last office managers, that was our thing during our whole interview process. That was one of the things he said to me. Well, I know that you don't look at me as income producing. And I had to stop him there and say, no, actually, you're wrong. I'm not your typical business owner where I look at that. Every single piece of us, every single part of that, it's all mindset. And every single part of that wheel that has to touch the ground to keep it going, it's all part of that income process. And so you have to take the mindset and figure out, to me, what's the mindset of the people within the business, and do they have a mindset of, the negative or the positive kind of thing?
Yeah, that tells you a lot about the culture that individual was functioning in the past.
Exactly.
So that's another big topic, Ray, is building a healthy culture. That's a huge one. But yeah, they need to know their value. And it sounds like this individual did not feel valued in the past. And I'm glad that you kind of broke that cycle.
Mm-hmm. I mean, really, saying income producing team members, and Doug and I think so much alike on a lot of things. And we can say that, okay, you're income producing, you're not income producing. Okay, so is your office manager income producing? Well, I can lump them in the non-income I'm sorry, everything's backwards. The non-income produce, like whenever I try to point at Doug, I usually point that way. The non-income producing thing. We look at our technicians as income producing on here because they're actually out in the field doing that. But really, who's one of the most income producing people, if you really want to break it down, is the person that answers the phone.
Yep.
The person that answers the phone with a smile in their voice and goes, "Hi, Spray Wash Exterior Cleaning, how can I help you today?" That person. The person on the Chick-fil-A speaker going, "It's a great day at Chick-fil-A. How can I mean, so yeah. I get it. And everybody on your team can wind up being income producing. But I mean, there is a difference as well, too. So, and I don't mean to ever, whenever I say income producing and non-income producing, I don't mean to do that. But when I say non-income producing, we know a lot of guys that will saddle themselves down very heavy on the administrative side and very light on the, there's a whole lot of chiefs. There's not enough Indians out there. And the Indians that are out there are way too saddled down with work. And the chiefs are just hanging around the campfire singing powwow songs.
So, Ms. Sierra, Tom is asking, what made you get into the coaching side?
So I will summarize that very quickly. So I had shared that I was in education before. I have my master's in education and I was working on my admin certification. My plan was to move into principalship and then the superintendent level. So I was doing a lot of professional development at the district level and really enjoyed working with adults because I felt like I was really having a bigger impact outside of my classroom. And I had a big shift in my career, basically because of my Lyme disease. So I got Lyme disease 10 years ago, ended up on bed rest for a total of 14 months, and I had to make a shift. So I was on bed rest, and someone that knew me well reached out and said, they had been doing leadership development for Department of Defense their entire career after they got out of the Army. They saw my passion for growing people and felt that this would be a good career for me. And so I spent the rest of my time on bed rest, getting my first certification, getting my feet wet, and then launched my business the moment that I was up and moving and walking again. And I've loved it ever since. So I really feel like that led me to what I was supposed to be doing. But I always say my background in education and being able to connect with people as learners, that's where learnership came from, lifelong learner and leadership skills combined to make learnership. I feel like that has served me so well as a coach, and I can't imagine coaching without that skill set. So
how long have you been coaching now?
it's been 3.5 years.
3.5
Nice.
years. That's awesome.
I wound up in the hospital from a non-specified tick-borne illness, and I am always in the back of my mind going, when is the Lyme disease going to hit? But
Oh no.
I got that bullseye ring on the back of my calf. I was building a tree stand out in the woods, and they never could actually figure out if it was truly Lyme disease, but they're like, yeah, you definitely got bit by something. And it kept on getting the bullseye bigger, bigger and bigger and bigger. And I felt like I was in the hospital for a solid like 5-6 days or so.
Wow. So my gut says, because you caught it early, I'm assuming they gave you antibiotics within the first 10 days. People who get the bullseye rash can usually get it treated, and then they don't have chronic Lyme disease. But for me, I didn't have a rash. So it was in my system for 1.5 years before they figured out what it was. So it damaged every possible system that it could.
It's a rough one. I understand that is a really, really, really rough one to deal with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Well, it sounds like it got you some at least some cool options though in your life. So that was kind of neat. It may have led to this. Now you said you taught earlier too. What did you teach? What was your target teaching?
So back in the day when I was an educator, or because I do teach for a community college now too. So I did 2nd, 5th, and 6th grade.
Little monsters. Nice.
Yeah. Yes. For 10 years. It was wonderful. I loved it, but I wanted to have a bigger impact. And so I knew that I needed to be in leadership to do that. And so that's where I just became passionate about it. And it carried over because it's not industry specific. I grow people, and I really enjoy it. And honestly, it sounds insane, but I'm glad that it happened the way that it did, because I wouldn't have my business today.
Well, and you say it's not industry specific. This is what I wish more and more people would learn. Very few things as far as administrative side, sales side, people side are industry specific. The pressure washers we use are industry specific. If I fly a drone 60 foot in the air to pressure wash the side of a building, that's industry specific. However, the relationship that I built to get to the point of closing that $20,000 job was not industry specific at all. It was
people specific.
It was people specific. It was relationship specific. It was, my wife and I actually own several businesses, together. And one of our newest ventures that we just started this year is Tom made a comment of, when I said I could sell ice to Eskimos, it should be shaved ice, because we own a Tiki shaved ice and ice cream truck.
Oh, cool.
We're the snow cone people. She hates it when I say snow cone because it's Hawaiian shaved ice. So many of the principles that we talk about here are the same principles that she uses when she goes to elementary schools and says, "Can we come for snack time?" Or when we go to a community event and people flock to our vehicle versus the creeper van that has ice cream stenciled on the side, not even stenciled, but with the brush on there. it's about making this experience a little bit higher value than everything else. It's about looking the part. It's about acting the part. It's about everything kind of coming together on there and doing the whole package type scenario.
Yeah.
The whole thing with the Lyme disease thing too is that this is something we teach and we preach all the time, is that life is going to throw so many different things at you, and your decision processes, and it's what you do after you get that thing thrown at you, right? If it's a snowball and it smacks you in the side of the face, you've got a decision to make of what you're going to do next, right? It doesn't matter. It's always that point of getting up and moving on. You could sit there and self-loathe and do all these different things, but at the end of the day, you got to get up and move on and move past whatever that is, no matter how difficult it can be at times.
Yeah. Resilience. It's another leadership skill that's totally necessary. I agree. You make something out of it. That's what I saw was, I'm like, okay, I have 8 months on bed rest. I didn't know how long it was going to take, but that's how long I had remaining when I decided to use it to get certified. I'm like, I'm just laying here every day. I need to make use of this time. So I started creating my plans.
Nice. I like it.
Very good.
I like that a great deal.
Well, we're right there at an hour. Is there anything topic you want to cover? Anything you want to say? Anything you want to do?
Nothing in particular. I feel like we've covered a good amount of stuff. No, I would just encourage people to stop and really think about the way that they're communicating with others and be more intentional about it. Our communication shouldn't look the same for everybody we meet. So I would just want to bring awareness to that and encourage people to start looking for those characteristics in others, and then and ask, if you're not sure how to modify to meet their needs, ask them what you can do to better support them.
I don't know if you can answer this question now or not, but Tom is asking about how much your services, what do you charge for your services, kind of thing. And that could probably be a very open question. So
it depends on what service we're talking about, but I will say that the prerequisite for ongoing coaching with me is a DISC assessment package, because I want to do it with every single person before we move forward. So we typically, I do the DISC and emotional intelligence assessment, and I do 3 debrief sessions, usually about 2 weeks apart. I give an assignment in between. At the end of that, I put together an action plan for the individual, and I say, you can either take this and run with it and implement it on your own, or you could choose to apply for ongoing coaching. So that package itself, with the assessments and the 3 appointments and action plan, is $750.
And so
that's where everybody would start.
Guaranteed results. And if I buy this from you, you're going to triple my sales, right?
There you go.
There it is.
Guaranteed.
I thought I heard her say in the pre-show meeting that if you bought her services, she would make you a millionaire within the first 3 months.
Of course.
I said that to Ray. I didn't say that to everybody.
That's because he's smarter than me. I'm just better looking. That's all.
You mentioned this, the difference between the coaching and the consulting, and so much of the coaching and consulting, and I hear people. Doug and I talk to a lot of guys in this industry, and we have ex parte, because part of what we do is coaching, and it's not a formal coaching like you do. A lot of times it's a very informal coaching. But we hear guys talk about, fussing about their coaches and fussing about this. And what people have the problem with about coaching is not the coaches themselves, it's the accountability of it. It's like, well, yep. I did coaching and it didn't really help me. But you didn't actually do the program.
I think the funny part about that, Ray, if you asked Sierra before we had any of this, I think that was part of one of the discussions her and I had prior to
you and I've never discussed this.
We're on the same page on that.
So many guys complain about it, but it's like, oh, the coach didn't help me. But It's like, but you never did you weren't held accountable. You didn't hold up your end of the bargain as the not the coach, but the coachee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
So
this
a
is a
couple of
race.
things I have to hop on this because you hit a nerve here. So number one, there are coaches everywhere you look.
Right.
Okay. Overnight, they're being born and they just say they're a coach because they think they know some topic in great detail. Okay, don't trust that every coach is actually a certified coach. That's the number one concern, because a lot of times I'll get phone calls after they've had a really bad experience with a coach who was kind of fly by night, didn't even know what they were doing. So
Right.
be
Maybe
cautious.
maybe
But
well-intentioned and all that, but still had no real idea how to be a coach. They might be
exactly.
great at their business, but they're not a coach.
Exactly. Number two, we talked about accountability. So I just rolled out a program specifically for accountability. So I know that it's crucial in every engagement that I have. I just did a strategic planning session with a client last week, and I'm doing quarterly accountability on their strategic plan. There has to be accountability built into everything that I do. But for those people who aren't ready for ongoing coaching but want to get their feet wet, I rolled out an accountability. It's a monthly subscription program where you can hop on. We have group accountability sessions every month. If they want to take it to the next level, they get 30 minutes one-on-one with me. But we're setting our goals in December for the new year, and having monthly accountability really does make a difference. So it's huge. But someone told me last week, that the word accountability freaks her out. And once she saw my email about the package, that she completely shut down because she doesn't want to be held accountable. So when we discussed it, we found out she was afraid that I was going to take my goals and I was going to force her to work towards the things I wanted her to. And I reminded her that the whole idea is these are her goals and she's taking ownership, and I'm holding her accountable to the things that she's setting out to do.
It sounds like a good moneymaker to me, though. Like, okay, you don't want to be held accountable? Awesome. We'll just cash that.
Just send me a check every month, and we don't even need to talk to each other.
Andrew Snyder just chimed in, and Andrew's one of these guys. He's a mentor of mine, and one of the more successful people you'll ever find in this or multiple industries. And you know, you hit, and as he said, you hit the nail on the head in this industry as well, because we've seen, Doug and I've seen, because we've been involved in the teaching aspect of this industry since 2012, 2013, 10 years now. Over the past 3 years, we have seen the coaching and the teaching in this industry just become ridiculous through social media. I mean, we've been doing this podcast now, and even before we found out this, we were on Be Live before, and before that we were just on we would get on Facebook, not on a regular schedule, and just do our little rants and our little video blogs with Spray Wash Academy. But it's shocking the amount of we laughingly call them gurus in the industry, and everybody has a YouTube channel now, and there's probably 75 different pressure washing groups out there with guys that get some kind of modicum of success or 15 followers. And I'm going to create my own channel, and I'm going to go and create a class, and I'm going to, and it's really quite sad. You'll have guys that are saying, well, yeah, we have $1 million company, but they're counting up like 5 and 6 years of production, on their company, going, okay, that's a little bit, to me, whenever you're saying you're the $1 million producer in your pressure washing, it means you're doing the $1 million a year. Not counting back, you've done
lifetime.
Lifetime Achievement Award of $1 million.
Okay. I'd hate to look back and see what I've actually done in a lifetime.
Right. It's but we see that here as well, just like you're seeing in the coaching industry. COVID changed so many things. So many people had a lot of time on their hands, and this advent of social media that's out here, and boy, it's been rough on all industries, honestly.
You know, even on the coaching side, I mean, Ray can say the same thing. Ray and I have been asked so many times to start coaching and to be a coach, and not that we couldn't be great, super effective coaches, that kind of a thing, but I think that's part of what we see in this industry is in probably in every industry, people that are just jumping into being coaches without being prepared to actually be a coach and to put in the work that it takes just to actually be a coach and to do real coaching things, if you would, and disc assessments and all these different kinds of things. So, you know, just because we have great knowledge and just because we have, you know, the ability to help guide and consult and teach and all that doesn't necessarily mean that coaching is the right way to go for everybody, because there's a lot of people out there doing coaching that have a lot less wherewithal than Ray or myself. And it's amazing. I think it's actually a testament to how much coaching is needed. And the reason I say this is because people are falling for these coaches, these guru coaches that have no business coaching and that really don't know what they're doing or don't know what they're talking about, yet people are following and listening and failing and doing all these things. That's why it's kind of important to research. So I guess for me, I'm kind of falling down to a line of asking, how would I find a good coach? If I wasn't looking for you, right? How would I find a good coach? What are the qualities or assessments for a good coach?
Well, first of all, I would ask them where they got their certification. Number one question. If they're able to answer with a certification, that's the first test. A lot of individuals that have a coaching business have done nothing to get certified in any capacity. And then you also want to research the certification that they have and see if it's legit. Is it I took a course for 8 hours and now I'm a certified coach? Like, how much effort, what sort of assessments, what actual coaching practice did they have? So that's huge. Number two, I think just getting to know them and asking them questions about what coaching means to them. I've tested that a few times with other coaches. So what does coaching mean to you? You decided to be a coach. What's it mean to you? And the ridiculousness that they come up with immediately tells me that they don't even know what it means to be a coach. So, you know, you're listening for those people who are going to say, I am your guide. I am a facilitator. I am asking questions. I'm not directive. You're listening for people who talk about those things, not I'm going to tell you what to do.
Well, like you said early on, you know, and I use my grandson as that example on there. Like, he might be able to understand how to snap a ball whenever he's under center, but he might need work whenever the quarterback's at shotgun out there. He may understand the blocking part just fine. I mean, the coaching is a relationship with your customer. I mean, you can't just sit here and say, I have a coaching program, and if you follow this, you'll be successful, because that's part of the coaching. You have to find out what your customer or your coachee needs before you can really sit there and say, yeah, I'm a coach. I can coach you. If you do this, you'll be successful.
Yeah. I would say also make sure they have a niche. Like, ask them what their niche is. What are they really good at coaching people through? So like I said to you guys, it's effective communication, it's conflict resolution, productivity, time management. So I have a list of like 5 or 6 things that I spend a lot of time on with folks and I've become really knowledgeable about. But the people who try to be what everyone needs and say yes to every opportunity are probably not the people that you need. If someone comes to me and I don't have experience in what they're looking for, I pride myself on collaborating with qualified coaches to be able to send them to another resource and say, you know what, it's like what you said earlier. I don't have the answer now, but I can't help you with this, but I have a whole team of resources and I collaborate with other coaches that can help you. So being able to go to a coach that is surrounded by other professionals as well, and know that they have resources for you.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Just
I
like
like
our industry.
I like it
Very good.
a lot.
I
Oh, and
do have a question.
Here, there. How does the NutriPod is a totally unrelated pressure washing question, I guess from that. Hector, NutriPod's Rust RX works. I'm not quite familiar with the
Rust
NutriPod's
RX.
Rust RX, but the NutriPods themselves work in a couple of different ways. It's a bleach neutralizer. If you're using the pods itself, you can either throw them in a gutter. So bleach running down the roof hits that, dissolves the package, or you can throw that little package in a 5-gallon bucket of water. It's measured out and then downstream that out to help neutralize the bleach. If that's what you're asking about, this is NutriPod's Rust RX work.
I think that might be something new from Joe. But
and I don't know if it is. I've not seen that yet. So
Miss Sierra, you said you had a question.
Yeah. So a couple of people asked, but you didn't address it. They said, why have you been so quiet?
Who, me? Sometimes it's just that way. Sometimes I go with what the conversation is, and if there's good conversation, hey, let's just keep it going. So why am I being so quiet? I don't know.
I'm just picking on
you. Nobody's ever asked that question of me. That's
surprising, right?
I want to hear your stand-up routine.
Oh man, well, now you really don't, because I
should I not encourage this?
Who did you mention earlier, Ray? And I was thinking, I wonder how old Miss Sierra is, and see if she even got understood where you were going with it. You remember that in the very beginning?
What was it?
I'm trying to think of who you mentioned. I'm trying to think of who he mentioned to be. It wasn't Groucho Marx, but I'm thinking of Groucho for some reason. So I don't know who he mentioned, but he mentioned the name of somebody, and I'm like, I wonder if she caught. Just age. It's an age thing, but anyhow,
I've got this is about my wife being a private. My wife actually has a private investigator's license. You never want to marry a private investigator because they. Never mind. I can't really read that.
Yeah, she
read that part online.
I want to hear this. Don't hold back.
Hold on. Let's see here. I know there's a lot of you ladies, some chubby chasing cubs out there thinking, oh yeah, I got to get me some of that middle-aged balding chunkiness. Sorry, but I'm married. They say that really good-looking people are considered eye candy. Well, that puts me somewhere down there around eye broccoli. And it's not that I'm really just this very honorable person. Not like I wouldn't go messing around, if the opportunity presented itself. But my wife has recently become like a private investigator. And that's really nothing you ever want your spouse to be as a private investigator, because they're basically watching you all the time, like whenever she gets the little gadget camera or something, apparently it's plugged in, like in the house here, or at my office, just, watching me. It's like, hey, did you fold that laundry? Yeah, really? And so that's not the point now where you run in there and fold the laundry. She's actually, whenever she does the, yeah, really, that's her chance for me to retract the lie that I just told to her, because it's like, okay, there's something here about, have you started dinner yet? Yeah, really? Who is Betty Sue Muck and Fudge? Honey, I don't know. I really have no idea. Well, apparently you had a joint bank account with her back in 1987. And I'm like, we've been married. I married you in 2000. I mean, I don't remember an ex-girlfriend from 35 years ago. So yeah, that's some of the stuff that I can actually say online and not get really, really, really.
Yeah,
that was amazing.
It doesn't come out all that great when he's not being him.
Yeah.
I was just enjoying watching Doug's face.
Because I know the words that are supposed to be in the middle there. Right?
Yeah, because Doug's actually, Tanya and I, we actually travel a lot. You know, we speak at a lot of different conventions, and we love vacationing. Is like you realize there's two different kinds of people in the world. There's those that meticulously plan, prepare, iron, pack, wash, fold, and repack. You know, for a trip 10 days in advance. And then there's those of us like me that roll out of the rack 4 hours before we go somewhere, realizing I've got a pile of dirty laundry that I need to do, that I'm going to have to take on this trip. And I've got to find a Publix bag to pack the crap in there. So
So actually, this is on topic because you just described 2 disc styles. So the first one was me. That's the C. I have it all planned out. And you are just flying by the seat of your pants.
I got one area where we were talking about washing tall buildings. And that was one of my specialties always was, and before we sold, Tanya and I sold our company 2 years ago and kind of semi-retired. The largest pressure washing company in the nation came in and bought us. They wanted our market. So we sold, but a lot of my stuff is about pressure washing, but I did a lot of high building work. And, there was just one time we were washing building about 23, 24 stories here in Tallahassee. And we're doing the roof of this building, and we're on a ledge. It's about, 3 foot, wide or so. And we're all strapped in, and Manuel looks at me and he's like, well, what if I fall? And I'm just like literally eating a cheeseburger up here. I'm used to high work. Well, you're going to die. That's pretty much what's going to happen if you fall. But the good news is Bubba is actually down there already with a pressure washer. So you won't make a big mess because we're going to get that thing cleaned up
Pretty quickly.
like that. You're going to be washed into the it's like, remember how you were telling me you like the ocean a lot? The good news is because your remains are going to get washed into the storm sewer right down to the beach, after about a 6-mile trip on there. And then, then all of a sudden he pukes on Bubba from 22 stories up, and I lose 2 employees that day.
Oh my gosh. Did you have coffee prior to this?
No,
is this you all the time?
Actually, Crown.
Yeah, there you go. Anyhow. We appreciate you for coming on, Miss Sierra. Hang out with us for just a minute as we sign off. And we really appreciate y'all. And we'll see you next week.
Guys, as usual,
gotta get this back into the
time. We know that everybody has a limited amount of time in this world, and that y'all spend hour and a half with us on Mondays. Really, just we appreciate it.
We appreciate it very much.
See you. We're going to end this. Thank y'all. Catch us on the rebroadcast. Y'all know where to find us. Thank y'all.
Thanks, guys.